Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Lakehead Live session. Today, we are going to be talking about all things off-campus housing and accommodations, and we're really happy that everyone has joined us today. So my name is Laura Puttis. I'm an international recruitment officer here at Lakehead University on our Thunder Bay campus. And I'm joined by two very special guests that will help me run the session today. So first off, I'll pass it over to Roddy Lynn from our Community Legal Services to introduce herself.
Yeah, good morning and welcome. I'm Roddy Lynn Resnick-Kiniski. I'm the director of Lakehead University Community Legal Services. We are a legal clinic located in the law school, not on main campus, but just off campus. And we are here to provide free legal services to people who qualify. So we do a ton of different things. I'll go through what those are a little bit later in the presentation. So it's nice to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Roddy Lynn. And next, I'll pass it over to Katie Stevenson.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Stevenson. I'm the International Engagement Specialist, and I'm based out of the Aurelia campus. So if you are coming to Southern Ontario, I will be your first point of contact. I support students throughout their pre-arrival, and when you arrive on campus, orientation, programming, and helping you get to know the community. I'm also a regulated international student immigration advisor, so can help you with your immigration questions when you are studying here. I look forward to working with you.
All right, so we're going to go into the agenda for today. So lots to cover. As I did mention, we are going to be speaking about off-campus housing and accommodation today. Before that, I want to get into a little bit more information about studying in Canada and Lakehead just briefly, especially for those of you that might be new to Lakehead. Maybe this is the first Lakehead Live session that you're attending. So we'll start there. Then I'll go into some information about how to search for housing, key considerations when searching for housing in both Aurelia and Thunder Bay, because of course this session is going to cover both of our campus locations and hometowns. Roddy Lynn will speak about the legal aspects of living off campus, so certain things to be aware of when you're entering lease and tenancy agreements. We'll talk about budgeting, we'll talk about roommates, how to live with others, and then of course we'll dive into the Q&A to get all of your questions answered. Let's talk a little bit about why so many international students choose Canada as their academic study home away from home. So Canada is ranked top 2 best countries in the world. It is a place that many international students have decided to pursue their education abroad. We are in the top 11 most peaceful countries in the world. And as a nation, we were actually the first country to develop a policy on multiculturalism. So Canada tends to be a very diverse, equitable, and safe place for international students, where there is also tons of variety in terms of institutions, cities, smaller towns. So we're going to talk a little bit about Lakehead, where Lakehead fits within that. But before that, when you are choosing Canada, you're also choosing employment and opportunity. So Canada has some of the most generous policies when it comes to working while studying, working after studying, and then pathways to settlement as well. So just to highlight a few, especially for those of you that might be new to this information, when you study in Canada, you are able to work part-time while you study. So part-time for us is identified as 24 hours per week. So that would allow you to obviously make some income on the side, but also build up your resume, get more experience, start that networking process while you're still in your studies. So you can work part-time. And then for undergraduate students who do have that 4-month summer break from May to August, you're actually eligible to work full-time during that period. All of Lakehead University's programs, because we are a public institution, are eligible for the maximum amount of PGWP, which we refer to as the postgraduate work permit. So all of our programs are eligible for a 3-year postgrad work permit, meaning when you wrap up your degree, you walk across that stage and graduate, you'll be able to stay in Canada for 3 years and get that employment experience. And if you decide you really love Canada, you want to make it your future home, there's many pathways to permanent residency if that's something that you decide to try applying for and pursue. And we see many international students that are very successful with that route. Now, when we talk about Canada, specifically, Lakehead University is based in Ontario. We have 2 campuses in the province of Ontario, Thunder Bay and Aurelia. So both of our campuses are in smaller cities. They tend to be a little bit more accessible in terms of affordability. They're very safe, but also very diverse and vibrant in their own right. Our campus and our university is accredited. So it's accredited by the Ministry of Education in Ontario. So that is the same body that accredits some of the bigger name universities that you might be familiar with, like University of Toronto, Western University. So we're all accredited by the same body. Ontario is the most popular province in Canada for international students to come study to. And part of this is because of industry and employment opportunities. So we as a province have the highest employment rate in Canada at 95.1%. Lakehead University actually has a higher employment rate than this average, which we're really proud of. I'll talk a little bit more about that in an upcoming slide. But because there is so much industry and a variety of industry in Ontario, employment options tend to be high. Housing is also a factor to consider, specifically in our hometowns of Thunder Bay and Orillia. Compared to some of those bigger urban centers, housing does tend to be a little bit more available, but also more affordable as well. And that's what we're going to be speaking about today. But I should mention that housing options include both on-campus and off-campus accommodation, even though we're focusing on off-campus today. So a little bit more about Lakehead specifically. We are, again, a public research university located in Ontario, and we are under 10,000 students. So that's actually considered to be on the smaller side when it comes to Ontario universities. But despite our smaller size, we have some rankings that we've achieved that we're really proud of. So I want to highlight a few here. We are ranked top 3 in Canada for research. And research is a big thing for our university. It's something that we incorporate into every single degree program, even starting from year 1 of an undergraduate degree. We were also ranked the #1 university under 10,000 students in North America by Times Higher Education in their Global Impact Rankings category last year. And consistently, we are ranked within the top 10 primarily undergraduate universities by Maclean's Magazine, which is sort of the standard university ranking system here in Canada. This year, though, we were actually ranked top 5 overall and #1 in Ontario. So we're really proud of that. And as I mentioned in the last slide, another thing that we're proud of is 97.4% of our graduates are employed in their field within 2 years of graduation. So this is almost 2.5% above the Ontario average, and then of course higher than the national average of Canada too. So I think it sort of speaks to the more personalized university experience and hands-on learning opportunities that we give our students. So a couple more quick facts before we dive into off-campus housing. As I mentioned, we are an accredited university under 10,000 students. So we have approximately 9,000 students between both of our campuses. One thing that we really pride ourselves on is having small class sizes. So this is reflected in our small student to professor ratio, which is 15 students to 1 faculty member in Thunder Bay and 13 to 1 in Orillia. So when you choose to study at Lakehead, you're getting a lot more of a community-oriented and supportive learning environment, which I think not only helps you succeed in the classroom, but also leads to, future opportunities down the line, whether it's research or employment. And those are things that we see many of our students benefit from. Even though we are a smaller university, we're proud to be very diverse and very inclusive. So we have 80 different nations, actually over 80 now, represented in our student body. And of our total campus population, we're about 21% international student enrollment. So over 1,900 international students currently registered on our campuses and growing. So that's a little bit more about Lakehead. And with that, we are going to dig into what we're all here for today, which is talking about off-campus housing. So lots of information to cover. Again, if you have questions as we go through the session, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we'll get to hopefully all of them as we wrap up. So when it comes to searching for housing, this might be a new process to you completely. Maybe, finding an apartment or house isn't something that you've experienced even in your home country. And then, the thought of doing that in a brand new environment might seem a little bit overwhelming. So that's why we're here. We're going to first talk about where to search for housing. So the good news is most of the searching that you'll do for off-campus accommodations is done fully online. So it's something that you can start, before you actually travel to Canada with the Lakehead University website, we actually have a portal that's dedicated to showcasing off-campus rental listings. So it's called our off-campus housing list. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in detail in the next slide, but this would be sort of our first recommendation of where to search for off-campus rentals. So with this portal, you're able to kind of filter, look at certain criteria for off-campus accommodations. And it's a really helpful tool. And of course, it's managed by Lakehead. So the rentals listings are like vetted to a degree. There are also some housing agencies that you can access. So in Thunder Bay, Home Sweet Home and Rent Panda tend to be two popular ones. So if you Google those, you'll be able to find their websites and see all of the different listings that are updated regularly. And then in Aurelia, there's a few such as Low Properties, AG Security Property Management, or AMK tend to be popular ones. And I'll just mention here, Katie, if there's any changes to this, if you need to pipe in at any time, feel free to interrupt me. Another place that's popular to look is local housing boards. So websites such as Kijiji, which is a really popular one in Canada, or even Facebook Marketplace tend to have lots of rental listings available. So there's lots of different places to look. Sorry, Kate, did you have something to say?
Yeah, if I can add a suggestion there, don't underestimate the power of social media. So try and leverage any Aurelia or Thunder Bay based Facebook groups. People looking for roommates. There might be upper year students who are interested and keen in having someone joining if they're sharing a home. So definitely leverage all you can with respect to social media opportunities.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Katie. We are seeing a huge trend in student Facebook groups popping up or WhatsApp groups. So the good news is that you'll be, in it together with other students, and there's a little bit of support that way too. Another thing I want to mention just before I talk about some other options for searching for housing is just be aware of rental scams. With anything sort of online, there is a possibility for a little bit of nefarious activity. So just be careful. Second guess yourself. If it seems like it's something that's too good to be true, it might be. That's why, you do have services such as our International Student Services ISS team that you can reach out to if you maybe have questions or are not so sure if something is really a standard in Canada. They'll definitely be happy to assist. So just, when you're looking at options online, that is the main way to look for them. It is a legitimate way too, but just be careful. When you arrive to Canada as well, there does tend to be rental listings in newspapers too. So in Thunder Bay, that would be our Chronicle Journal, our main newspaper, or online at tbnewswatch.com. And in Aurelia, it would be the Aurelia Matters paper. So another place to look, but I would imagine most of you will be looking on websites. In terms of the best time to start looking for off-campus housing, I would say typically students will start the process a month or two before their planned arrival to Canada. Right now, especially if you're coming for September, it might be a little too early because most of the landlords are going to be looking for people to move in during the summer months. So I would say a couple months before is a good time to start the search process. In the last slide, I had mentioned the Lakehead University off-campus housing list. So you can see a photo of sort of what it looks like here, and you can access the link yourself at offcampus.lakeheadu.ca. You'll notice there's quite a few listings there right now, but it tends to become a lot more populated the closer we get to the fall semester, just because that is our main intake here at Lakehead. So with this portal, you can filter by, of course, campus. So looking at both availability in Thunder Bay and Aurelia. You can filter by property type. So whether you're wanting a house, an apartment, a townhouse, and we'll talk a little bit more about property types in a few slides. And then as you can see, there's lots of different filters. Like if you want to make sure you have a place with a dishwasher or laundry, you can select those categories as well. Any listing that is on this website is approved by an administrator here at Lakehead. We do not actually go and see these places in person, so I want to be careful about mentioning that. You still need to, be cautious and safe when you're connecting with landlords here, but they are approved by us and they stay up on the website typically for 30 days. So you know that if it's still on the website, most likely it's a place that's still available. I will also mention that roommate listings are also on this link, as well as on other websites like Kijiji that we mentioned or Facebook Marketplace. And this would be for people that already have maybe a shared house or shared apartment that are looking for roommates to join their lease or tenancy agreement. So that might be an option too to look into. So a couple key considerations as you're looking for off-campus housing. You want to make sure that you're in a good and safe neighborhood. And again, this is something that you can kind of rely on our International Student Services team or us to give you some feedback about. You also want to make sure that you're in an area that is going to be conveniently located for you to come to campus. So one thing to consider is every student that comes to Lakehead, integrated into your student fees is going to be an all access bus pass. So that will be your transit pass that you can use unlimited for the entire academic year. Some students are lucky enough to find off-campus accommodation that's very walkable to campus. That definitely happens. And we'll chat a little bit more about the areas that are, 10, 15-minute walk away from our campuses that many students live in. But other students will live a little bit further away and do rely on that transit system to kind of navigate. Another thing you want to consider is its proximity to employment. So many of our students, as you know, will work part-time while they study. So depending if you find a job or if you're looking to find a off-campus rental close to employment opportunities, that's a consideration as well. Wanting to find something that's walkable to a grocery store, recreation and gyms. If you want to be more in the hustle and bustle of the city, maybe considering living more downtown where more the restaurants and nightlife is. And then again, a big consideration, making sure you have access to a convenient bus route. So I would say the easiest way to navigate this from abroad, just because it's hard when you're not here and you're not super familiar with the city, is use Google Maps. If you're looking at off-campus rental listings, usually they will give you the exact street number and street name. And you can see on Google Maps if there are grocery stores nearby. You can also navigate it with public transit to Lakehead University campuses. So you can see exactly how long your route would be, how many transfers you might need to do. So that will be a really good tool for you to use as you're making these considerations. So next, I'll pass it over to Katie to talk a little bit more about locations in Orillia.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, I wanted to offer some insights and advice for those of you who are heading to our Aurelia campus. So on the screen here, you can see our city transit system. As Laura mentioned, you do get a bus pass when you're coming here as a full-time student, and that's via the Lakehead University Student Union. It is a great perk. You are going to use it, trust me. You will get your money worth. So to orient you, on the bottom left corner is where Lakehead University's main campus is located. If you see the blue and red routes, we're in the bottom left corner where there's a little loop there. So if you are preferring to live close to campus to make it convenient for you coming to and from class, really anywhere kind of along that left side of the screen and the map there, the blue and red lines, that is all housing to the left part. So when you go on these different resources that Laura shared with you, you're going to see different addresses reflected in that area. They will pop up on Google Maps. It is a very popular area for student living. The tricky part is because there's high demand for housing in this area, the cost is also probably going to be a little bit more than living in other neighborhoods within the city. You need to weigh that with the fact that if you live in another neighborhood on another bus route, you are going to have to transfer buses and hop on one of the Westridge routes that brings you up to campus. So if you choose to live more north, east, south, you are going to be going right in the middle of the map there to transfer and then head west to come to the campus out on University Avenue. So take that into consideration. We are having more development happening in and around the university campus here. So there are new housing opportunities popping up all the time. I will note that as a student at the Aurelia campus, you also receive a membership for the Aurelia Recreation Center. We don't have a large gym space on campus. We do have a small one in residence, but if you're looking for a full gymnasium to play sports, pools, all that kind of stuff, this is what your Aurelia Recreation Center pass is going to get you access to. The Aurelia Recreation Center is actually on the south route, so on the purple route on your screen. So if you plan on spending lots of time at the gym and you're a very active person into fitness, that might be something to consider as well. But again, you will be then transferring buses to then head west out to the university. Um, the South Route is also home to Georgian College. So therefore, you might also see a lot of student-oriented housing on that purple route as well. So maybe other Georgian College students who are looking for roommates to live with, which would be a great alternative to living with Lakehead students. So hopefully those are some things to consider as you start getting oriented and searching for your housing in Aurelia.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. So shifting over to Thunder Bay, similarly, we've included a map of our transit system here. So as you can see, Thunder Bay is quite a long city in terms of the north to south proximity. But luckily, Lakehead University, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see my mouse hovering here, but there's a little blue flag there. It's actually kind of right in the center of the city. So very centrally located, right across the street from our main regional hospital as well. So tends to be a lot of transit in and out of this area. We have, of course, a main bus stop right on our campus, which will pick you up from the Agora. So the main meeting spot here on the Thunder Bay campus. And the two bus lines that connect through here are the Crosstown, which is the number 2, and the Junot number 9. And they're passing through campus very regularly, at anywhere between every 10 to 20 minutes at peak times. So that would be those two lines that you can kind of see, the light blue there and then the dark blue. So one thing to note is we do have a little bit more of like an expansive transit map, just being a bit of a bigger city than Aurelia. So it's not always possible to find accommodation that will be right along that light blue or dark blue line. So many of our students will live in many different parts of our city, depending on if they find the right fit in terms of affordability and what they're looking for. But our transit map is all connected. So most of these lines will all connect through sort of the main terminal hubs, like our waterfront terminal, city hall terminal, or our intercity shopping center, where most of these lines intersect. So it's very, very common for, if you're living off campus, maybe not to just take one bus. You might have to transfer through and take another line. And that's very, very normal. It's just about making sure it is a convenient route and that you're not going all around the city. And again, that's where Google Maps will really come into play. So with Lakehead, I would say one of the most popular neighborhoods that is, again, like a little bit more walkable to campus, where you might not need to rely on transit, would be sort of that Academy Drive. So if you're looking at Lakehead on the map here in the center, it's sort of to the right of that area where there tends to be a lot of affordable student housing. And that's where you'll see a lot of those rental listings be. I would say a lot of students also live kind of near the lighter green area too. So depending on the time of year, definitely this is walkable or bikeable, but again, connected through transit as well. Some students will also live a little bit more south of the campus too. So kind of where that purple and red line is, that would be considered our Northwood area. So it tends to be a very residential area with shared housing and more apartment style buildings too. So really there's options all around the campus, all around the city. It's just kind of trying to find the best fit that works for you. And also access to amenities, as we mentioned again. Do you want to be in a really quiet or residential part of town, or would you rather be somewhere central? So these are all different types of things to consider as you're looking at places. And again, lean on us. We are locals here. So myself and I believe Roddy Lynn, we're both from Thunder Bay. Katie, you've been in the Aurelia, Simcoe County area all of your life as well, I believe. So that's why we're here, and we are here to help. Okay, so next we're going to dive into some other considerations when you're looking for off-campus housing. So starting with housing style, so thinking about if you want to live in shared housing where you would have roommates and shared common areas with other people, or if you want to live independently. For those of you that are coming alone and want your own place, that would typically be a studio or one-bedroom apartment. Or if you're coming with family independence, you may be looking into like apartment or even a house. With shared housing, that would be something where it might be listings that are seeking roommates, or it might be you kind of teaming up with other people to find shared housing together. So in terms of property types, we would be looking at sort of the main types of looking at house rentals, townhouse rentals, duplexes, apartments, or basement apartments. So we're going to dive right into these. So if you're looking at apartments, this would typically be in a larger building with many different units on different floors. So apartments can be single, they can be studio or one bedroom, or apartments can have multiple bedrooms as well. So an important consideration when you're looking at that. Apartments tend to be pretty convenient for students because, you know, things like common hallways, snow shoveling, utilities tend to be included in the price that you pay. Obviously, this varies depending on the listing, but does tend to be a pretty convenient option for students. And sometimes these places are also furnished too. So that's another thing to consider when you're looking for off-campus is do you want a place that's furnished so you don't need to worry about, you know, getting a bed and a table when you arrive? And there will be options for that as well. Many of our students live in duplex accommodations. There tends to be quite a few of these in Thunder Bay specifically. So from the outside, it kind of looks like a house, but you can see on the image here, it's two different units. So it's kind of like a house split in half where these two units would be completely separate. And then townhouses is sort of like row houses where, you know, it's one structure, but many different single units within the townhouse. And of course, many of our students rent full houses as well, especially if they're kind of pairing up with other students. That tends to be really common. So you'll see a lot of listings for full homes in Thunder Bay and Aurelia. Usually these are obviously not single rooms. They would be anywhere between, I would say, 2 to 5 even, depending on how big the house is, but tends to be a really popular option. And then you'll also notice that there are a lot of basement apartment opportunities too. These tend to be a little bit more affordable just because they are like underground, but usually most basement apartments will have like windows and amenities, and it is a very legal and common type of accommodation in Canada. So you'll see a lot of those as well. And again, tends to be a little bit more affordable. So some students will take that into consideration. All right, so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Roddy Lynn just to talk a little bit more about legalities when it comes to off-campus housing.
Thanks, Laura. Welcome again. Just a very brief overview first of what we do here at the clinic. So every law school in Ontario has a student legal clinic, which allows us to take current law students and basically put them to work to be able to help people in the community. We're funded through Legal Aid Ontario, which allows us to do all of the great work that we do and give our law students some experience. So as I sort of said in the beginning, we're not located directly on campus, but we're not far. We're definitely on bus routes. We're even walkable from the main campus area, depending on what the weather is like outside. But we're also available through social media as well. And we come to main campus quite often and give presentations and are able to answer questions as well. So we're here really to promote access to justice and help people understand. We know that as students coming from a different country, you may not be familiar with some of the legalities and the law in Ontario, and you may have a lot of questions about signing a lease agreement, about what your landlord may be telling you. So those are the things we specialize in and we can definitely help with. We'll go to the next slide. So our clients aren't just students. Our clients are anyone who live in the community in the district of Thunder Bay, and we're here to help, right? So it's no cost. Our services are always free. We have a small sort of questionnaire that we need to ask at the beginning to see if people qualify for our services. And if you don't, we would refer you elsewhere. But the very first thing is if you ever have a legal question, anything, not even just about housing, is to give our office a call. And that's the easiest way to let them know, let our staff know who answers the phone, you know, what you think your question's about, and we'd be able to help you. And if we can't, we'd be able to refer you elsewhere. And then, as I said, always our services are free. Next slide. So these are some of the areas that if you ever have questions about while you're in Thunder Bay, you can definitely reach out to us. Give us a call, or if you see us on main campus, come and chat with us. So we have what's called provincial offenses matter. So sometimes people may be charged by the police for something. Maybe it's a driving offense. That's usually what we see. Someone may have been speeding, wasn't realizing it. You don't have to tackle things like that yourself. We are here to be able to help people through that process and attend attend with them to court dates and things like that, and just help people and give them general advice on, what that may mean. Same with minor criminal code offenses. So things that are a bit more serious than provincial offenses, but you've been charged under the criminal code. So just remember those words. If it ever comes up or you know anyone who may need assistance, give us a call. Number 3, what we're here today to talk about mostly is landlord and tenant matters. It is by far our busiest area of what people have questions about and what they seek our help with. So don't ever be embarrassed. Don't ever be shy. If you have a question, we're here to help. I mean, you have great people on main campus as well who are very educated. But as far as the legalities go and any legal questions, that is what we're here to do. In addition to our students working on the file, all of our students are supervised by practicing lawyers. I'm one of the 4 lawyers here in the clinic, and the students are working with us all the time to be able to help people. Civil disputes, small claims court. So this may be something people may discover, maybe you've loaned money to somebody while you're here as a loan, a friend, and then they don't pay you back and you want to say, hey, what are my legal rights? How can I get this money back? Or maybe not even a loan, but it's something you've signed up for. Maybe you've signed up for a service and you thought, I'm not really getting the service I think I signed up for. Can I do anything? Can I get my money back? Can I get out of that contract? Those are the things that we see and we can help with. And then last but not least, employment laws. So you've already heard you can actually work while you're here as a student, and we help employees understand what their rights are. So this is, again, another area we get a lot of questions from international students, and that's why we're here. We're here to let you know what the laws are about employment and what your rights are as employees. Next slide. We're off campus. This is a picture of our beautiful building. Some people say it looks like a castle, but this is our contact information. So if you need to ever reach out to us, give us a call. But obviously we have an email address, a website, and a Facebook page. So you can take note of that and definitely reach out with any questions. So now let's get into housing, and just to be able to sort of answer some questions that you may be thinking about is, as you start to look, what happens after you think you may have found a place? Well, in Ontario, the law says people should be signing an agreement, and it's called a standard form of lease. And I've included a picture of what that looks like. Now, sometimes landlords aren't aware that they need to use this agreement, and that's okay, but feel free to tell them, can we use a standard form of lease agreement to sign the lease? And if you have any questions about, my landlord doesn't want to do that, they've given me something else, again, those are questions that we can help with. We can help answer that if you have any questions. But remember, standard form lease is what you want to see. It's standard because the Ontario province has actually said, here's everything that should be contained in that agreement. So just to make sure no one is forgetting anything, like let's have the landlord's full name, the address and phone number of the landlord so you know how to contact them, your full name, maybe your email address and phone number so the landlord knows how to contact you. That's really important that you know how to reach out to your landlord and what the best way of communication is. The agreement's going to set out other important things like how much your rent is. You've heard Laura talk about and Katie talk about prices can vary. You don't want to be unsure. You want to know exactly what the rent is that you're paying. So make sure it's in the lease agreement, and this form has an exact spot for it that you look for, and it's very clear this is how much your rent is going to be, and it's usually the rent per month. You pay it every month, and it has to say when it's due. So typically we see rent due on the 1st of each month, but your agreement's going to tell you if it's the 1st of each month or if it's a different day. So those are really good things to pay attention for. Make sure that you're clear when you read the agreement so that you know when your rent is due. Other things to keep in mind is, are you going to have a car? Will you be driving while you're here? Will you have a parking space at the place that you're renting? So those things are other items that can be put into the agreement. So I have a parking space. Is that parking space included in my rent, or do I need to pay something extra? So it helps you also have those conversations with your landlord. It's also an agreement where you can list other rules, or the landlord can indicate if there's other rules they want you to follow. One of the big ones we see a lot of is sometimes landlords are saying, I don't want any smoking happening in the building or in the apartment or in the unit. And there again is a clause in the agreement that it will itemize from the landlord saying no smoking allowed. So those are all really good things to know, and it's right in the agreement. There's also some other sections to this agreement that talk about what are your responsibilities as a tenant, and also what are the landlord's responsibilities. There's many sections, but things to keep in mind is, who's responsible for any repairs. If you have a furnished apartment that you're renting, then if something goes wrong with that, the stove stops working or the fridge stops working, the landlord needs to replace that. So those are the landlord items that they said they were giving to you to use while you were renting. So you make sure you reach out to them if there's any issues. You don't have to fix those yourself. Of course, if there's something that you damaged while you're there, then the agreement would set out what your responsibilities are as far as fixing that goes. It's also important to know when your landlord can enter your unit. The agreement will set out that the landlord has to give you at least 24 hours notice, and it has to be in writing, and they have to give you a specific time frame of when they're going to come in. So if your stove stopped working for some reason, you tell your landlord, they then need to give you a notice and say, okay, I'm going to send somebody in 2 days from now, and they'll take a look at it and then hopefully fix it. So they have to give you notice. They can't just come over and come into your unit at any time. And the last thing we just like our international students to know is sometimes landlords will say in their agreements that you can't have any pets. Generally speaking, that clause is not enforceable. You can have pets. The law says that you can have pets. Where sometimes it can get tricky is just, of course, if there's other people living in your unit or in your building that may have some serious allergies, or some other health concern. If there's a health concern, then that could be a situation where you can't have pets. But just on the face of it, yes, you can bring some goldfish in. Yes, you may have a cat or a dog at some point. And barring any health concerns, that shouldn't be a problem. So I think that maybe it for us. So again, we are here. If you ever have questions about that tenancy agreement or issues that you may or may have with your landlord, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. We are here to let you know what your rights are, and your landlord can't evict you, can't evict you for asking questions and for knowing what your rights are. So don't hesitate.
Thank you so much, Roddy-Lynn. Very helpful information for new students coming to Canada. I did want to ask, just because I wasn't sure, with the services, would this be just typically available to students at our Thunder Bay campus, or is there options for online support for Aurelia?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's for the District of Thunder Bay, and that's only because we're funded by legal aid for this district. Having said that, Aurelia is in a community that has a community legal clinic. And
Excellent.
so the community legal clinic there definitely gives help and advice with similar issues, and tenancy is one of them.
Okay, very helpful to know. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So we have a bit to cover before we move into the Q&A portion. So let's talk about budgeting. So as Roddy-Lynn had mentioned, like there is a huge range in terms of what you might be expecting to pay when you're looking for off-campus accommodation. So a few things that can affect this cost would be proximity to campus. Obviously, landlords know that it's very convenient for students to live really close to campus. So in some cases, you might notice that some of those listings that are in close proximity tend to be a little bit higher. So it's all about considering, weighing the factors. Would you rather pay a little bit more and be closer? Or are you comfortable maybe having a half-hour, 45-minute commute on the bus to get to campus and paying a little bit less? Another thing that will majorly impact pricing is the property like style and whether you'll be living with roommates, and if so, how many roommates, or if you'll be living independently. So tend to be more expensive, of course, if you're living on your own in a one-bedroom or studio or in a family house. So another thing to keep in mind there. Another note, you'll notice that this on a lot of listings is Some off-campus rentals will be totally inclusive, meaning that all of your bills, whether it's water, heat and hydro, sometimes even Wi-Fi, will be incorporated into one price that you would pay monthly. But in some cases, they will maybe want the tenants to pay these bills. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And there are some different resources and websites where you can kind of look at average, internet and hydro and water costs in different cities. Another thing is availability of laundry. So is there laundry services within the unit, the house, the apartment, or would that be something that you would need to seek elsewhere, like at a laundromat? And in that case, that would affect the price as well. And then, of course, availability of parking. If you do decide to get a car when you come to Canada, that's another thing that would be usually clearly listed in the rental. And in some cases, can be a slightly higher price for units that have parking. Or if you're living in an apartment building, you may need to pay a monthly parking fee as well. So lots of considerations that you might not think of there. So in terms of living expenses, what you're sort of looking at is, of course, rent. That is going to be a stable fee that you would sign in your lease agreement. You'll know exactly how much you're paying for rent. Internet, depending on if that's included or not, that might be something you need to get on your own, in which case it's helpful to shop around for different plans. Cable, if that's something you decide to get, would be a standalone cost. And then, of course, figuring out, what your budget is for meals and groceries, because living off campus, you're not going to have a meal plan like you would if you're staying on campus. Transportation, you have that all access bus pass, so no worries there. But if you do decide to get a car, that's an additional fee when it comes to insurance and gas and car payments. So lots of different things to consider here. So we kind of talked about, shared houses versus independent apartments or housing. One thing that I will mention is that we notice with shared housing, usually that is inclusive rent, which means you would typically be paying one set price monthly, that it would include your rent and all of your bills. Whereas we notice more commonly with independent apartments and houses, it would be non-inclusive, where you would actually be responsible for those extras, such as utilities, internet, in some cases, laundry as well. So just wanted to keep that in mind. We do have a helpful chart here where we sort of compare on-campus and off-campus housing estimates in both of our hometowns, and for undergraduate and graduate students as well. And the reason that we've divided it for undergrad and grad students is because undergraduate students study 8 months out of the year. So the academic year runs from September to April, whereas graduate students study year round. So it is an 8 versus 12-month estimate. So you likely know that Lakehead University does have on-campus accommodation, and we still do consider on-campus to be, the most convenient option for new international students. We understand that it's not an option for every single student, whether it's because you're coming with family independence who aren't able to live on campus, or if it's just your personal preference, you might be seeking off campus. But do note that on-campus accommodation is available. Applications are still open. And if you have any questions or need more information about that, please do connect with us or check out our website for information on how to apply. We also have a session just about residence and on-campus accommodation that you'll find in our Lakehead Live archive as well. But in terms of the range for off-campus here in Thunder Bay for an undergraduate student for a 1-bedroom, it's between, we've budgeted 8,000 to 9,600. So this works out to be anywhere between 1,000 to over 1,000 a month. And that's for a 1-bedroom, so not a shared accommodation. So note that if you do decide to live with roommates, typically, this amount can be much cheaper. And then in Aurelia, slightly more expensive. So the range there would be 10,400 for that 8-month period to 12,000. With on-campus accommodation, you'll note that especially if you live in the dorms, you will have a full access meal plan. So that would be 7 days a week. As many times as you want to eat in the cafeteria, you can. Whereas if you live off campus, food and groceries would be something that you're responsible for paying for, as well as things like cleaning supplies and all of that. So another consideration there. And you might want to take a screenshot of this just because, you might not have decided yet if you want to stay on or off campus. And there's lots of different factors that can make, on campus more affordable, or depending on the style of accommodation you choose, off campus can be more affordable. So there's really no one right answer. It's just about figuring out sort of what is best for you based on all the factors that we've talked about today. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Katie for the last section of our session. So she's going to talk about living with others, living with roommates.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so if you plan to live with roommates, which most of our students do, we wanted to offer our advice and tips and tricks to guarantee the best success possible for you. So your roommates are people that you're going to be spending a lot of time with. So we would recommend that you try and get to know them and all about them as much as possible, as soon as possible. So some room norms that you could discuss with your other future roommate or your current roommate include things around how you use personal spaces, how you're going to share different things, whether that's going to be sharing food or grocery shopping, clothes, personal belongings, how you're entertaining guests who will be also coming into the home and the shared space that they might expect to see. Sleeping is a big thing. People vary greatly in terms of what their preferences are and what hours they're going to be asleep and awake. So that's something to discuss. Um, what kind of quiet hours you want to have in the house versus what type of social time you want to have in the house when it's okay to do louder activities and be entertaining. Um, these are some great suggestions and topics that you could also use as you are doing your research and exploring options. Laura shared in previous slides that there are roommate postings, people who are looking for new people to move into their shared spaces. These are some topics that you could ask these people about in your conversations as you're exploring your options. Ask them about how these norms currently look in their home. So ask them what study hours look like or how they handle overnight guests. And in doing so, it'll give you a lot of insight into whether it's the right fit for you personally. The second thing we want to encourage is communication. So communicate as much as possible, not just about the bad stuff, but also about the good stuff. Keep the conversation going. Get to know these people. Juanita, it sounds like volume is a little bit of an issue. I'll try and speak up or get a little bit closer to the microphone. Um, One thing that's really important is to not let issues or problems boil up. Talk about them as soon as possible. So don't stew on it. Don't, stay angry for days upon days about some issues that are happening. Address it with your roommates as soon as possible. Don't let it become a bigger issue. Okay, so bring it up with them, have a conversation. Okay, we can move to the next slide. Perfect. Um, the third suggestion we're going to give you is to pick your battles. And what we mean by that is understanding that your roommates aren't going to be perfect and you're not going to be perfect either. So you can't make an argument or challenge someone on every little thing. Decide what things are important and what things you're willing to bring up and address as being problematic. Ask yourself, is this truly a problem that I need to address with this individual? Is it hurting anyone? Is there anything at risk here? Or maybe it's something that's just a personal preference. So please consider this and pick your battles with your roommates. Number 4, find other friends. So yes, your roommates are important people to be friends or at least friendly with, but expand your relationships outside of your home. Connect with your classmates, your peers that you're going to be meeting on campus. These are people that are important to build relationships with so that if something does happen within your home with your roommates, you have other companionship outside of your home, people that you can lean on, you can talk to, that you can ask for their opinion when situations might arise. All right, so some conversation topics you might have with your roommates after you move in together. Talk through how you're going to handle the payment of rent and other joint expenses. So is it one person who's going to be making these payments or is responsible for paying a certain bill? And how are these things going to be handled? Talk about how you're going to use each other's possessions. You don't want to become frustrated because someone is using maybe your food up in the kitchen and that wasn't the agreement. So talk about this in advance. Talk about how you're going to be inviting people over, having guests, whether they're staying during the day or they're going to be overnight guests, and visitors. Discuss it in advance. Cleaning is a big topic that comes up. It is important to note that if you are going to be living off campus in particular, all the cleaning is going to be your responsibility. And this might be something that's new. This is something we hear from students that it's a new responsibility they're not familiar with. So discuss it with your roommates. Who's going to be responsible for cleaning the kitchen regularly? How are you going to share that? Who is going to be cleaning your bathrooms? Um, Talk about this in advance. Groceries and food and meal prepping. If you're living off campus, of course, you're going to be making and enjoying your own food. Um, some students have had great luck with doing this jointly with their roommates. If they share the responsibility of grocery shopping and meal planning and prepping, it can take something off your plate and leave you time to do some of your other tasks. Talk about whether this is something that you're interested in doing. This might vary depending on food intolerances, diet preferences, where you're going to be grocery shopping, but it's worth a conversation. We have had students be very successful in making an arrangement with their roommates. Mail is an important topic. You, especially as international students, could be receiving very important documentation through the mail. So know what the rules are around this, how you're handling it, where mail is going to be kept, who has the key to your mailbox, because you don't want important documents to go missing. Furniture and appliances is worth a conversation. Some of your living accommodation arrangements might include certain furniture and appliances, some may not. If they do not, this might be another shared expense that you could incur with your roommates. And the last suggestion, communication with your landlord. Communication with your landlord is very important. You want to be very open. You want to be able to ask questions, address concerns as they come up. But it might be worth having one point person who's responsible for calling the landlord when these things come up. If the landlord has lots of people contacting them, they might have conflicting viewpoints being shared, and it could become very difficult very quickly. So please discuss with your roommates who is going to be the contact person with your landlord. Okay, some final considerations for you. Some things to think about. What do you need to purchase in order to make your living accommodations a good space, a suitable space for you? So do you need to purchase anything to be used in your kitchen? Do you need to purchase some other furniture? Think about these things in advance and make a budget for it. Consider what type of off-campus housing is the right choice for you. So we've talked about lots of different options today. Everyone has their own preferences and what they're used to. Please take some time to consider what might be the right decision for you as you make this move to Canada. We've created a nice little to-do list for you. It's some good work that you can do behind the scenes right now. As Laura mentioned, it's a little bit early to start booking and completing your decisions for finding off-campus accommodations for September. But right now is a really great time to go through this to-do list and do some good reflection. Laura, I will turn it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. So with that, that is most of the information that we have to cover. We got through a lot, I would say, and we do have a few minutes left for some questions. So I see a few in the Q&A already, but for those of you that have not asked your question yet, please do so now so we can make sure to get to all of them. So the first question that came through is, when is it possible to change on-campus or off-campus housing? So with this question, I'm not sure if you mean staying on campus and then shifting to off-campus. If that is what you mean, I would say that most students, the standard on-campus lease agreement is 8 months, depending on when you start your program. If you're starting in September, you would be locked in from a September to April period. Following that, then you could explore off-campus accommodations. So yes, it does tend to be an 8-month agreement there. And we do notice this as a trend with many students and international students, is staying on campus for the first couple terms and then shifting off campus once you become a little bit more familiar with the community. You meet people in person that you figure out you might, want to live with and have a good roommate dynamic with. So that's something we see happen a lot. Another question that came through is about the duration of on-campus contracts for grad students. So in my experience, it is typically 8 months, and then students would then reapply for a summer term if they're wanting to extend their stay on campus, which would be from the May to August period. So usually you'd be locked in as if you're starting in September from that September to April period. And then following that, there would involve a reapplication for the summer term. So that is my understanding, but maybe I'll have Christine put in the chat the residence administrator's email, just because they might be the best one to advise on that, because policies do change from year to year. So it's possible that something might have shifted. Another question that came through is there enough on-campus accommodations and when should we apply? So typically, yes, Lakehead does have accommodation for most international students that want to stay on campus. Obviously, it's not something we can guarantee every single year, because one year we might have way more students than typical want to live on campus. But traditionally, yes, we have room on campus, but it is very, very crucial to apply before the recommended deadline. So in Thunder Bay, the recommended deadline to apply is June 2nd. And maybe again, in the chat, we can put the link to our website of how to apply for residence. And Katie, do you mind confirming, is it also that June 2nd deadline down in Aurelia to apply for housing for the next cycle?
Yes, I believe so.
Perfect. Yeah. So there's still lots of time, but we do recommend, even if you're not sure, you're still debating between on or off campus housing, it really might be worth it to apply online, just so you have a wider range of options. All right, so with that, I don't see any further questions in the Q&A. I will leave it up for about another minute, but I do want to put on the screen here just a reminder to stay connected with us, and then checking out our socials and staying connected with us there as well. So I think with that, I'm not seeing any further questions come through. I want to thank everyone again for attending. I also, of course, want to thank my amazing co-hosts here. Katie and Roddy Lynn, you've been such a great help at sort of highlighting a lot of important information and considerations when it comes to off-campus housing. So thank you both so much. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day, and hopefully we see you at a future session. All right. Bye, everyone.